Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Buff Breakdown. Today is batch 6 of the anniversary 8 buffs, and we get the buffs for a 5-star foreigner and a 3-star rider. And the 5-star foreigner buff went according to my prediction, aka Summer Abigail. Skill buff right there. And then the 3-star rider one went actually to Mandricardo. Was not my prediction, but yeah, he also got a skill buff. So let's just immediately jump into the buffs, starting with Abigail, and then I'll tell you what I think about them. So they buffed her second skill, I believe. Yes, it's the terror one. So what it used to do on a 7-turn cooldown, you had a or rather, she inflicted terror on all enemies for 1 time 3 turns, and then on max rank every turn there was a 55% chance to stun the target of the terror for 1 turn. Now again, these are individual chance calculations for all enemies that get applied this terror debuff for. And obviously within those 3 turns, I believe it can, you know, fully whiff, like if you lose 55% 3 times. And that's, I believe that doesn't even factor in debuff resistance. So it was always a bit wonky, you know, terror is always a bit unreliable, you know, and obviously you can't even control when the stun happens, if it happens, so kind of wonky there, I suppose. And then also it does a 20% defense down on all enemies for 3 turns. So that on a 7-turn cooldown, for an SSR skill these days, it's pretty weak, I would say. Unless you get really lucky with your stun timings on all the enemies. So now, first of all, the cooldown has come down 1 turn. So now it's on a 6-turn cooldown on max rank, which I believe is more reasonable. The terror itself stays the same, including the chance to stun every turn. So that doesn't change at all. Neither does the 20% defense down on all enemies for 3 turns. That also stays the same. But we have another new effect, which is a 30% buster up for herself for 3 turns. Very much needed, I would say. As everyone hopefully knows at this point, Summer Abigail is one of the weakest damage dealers of all SSRs. Unless she's like fighting Zerks, then she can probably do fine, but like for any neutral damage, she would never do any damage. And I gotta be real with you here, even after this, again, we don't even have the looping numbers yet updated, but I don't assume they will go up much at all. I still think she will probably be one of the weakest damage dealers out there for both farming and DPSing. I don't really see this being the big, you know, issue solver. If anything, I was kind of hoping for an MP buff, because the MP still does like noodle damage, assuming even after this, because this really isn't all that big. Now, one thing that I should note is that now that it's on a 6-turn cooldown, and since she is a buster looper herself, you can stack this for the final wave, meaning you get 60% buster up, so it should help a little bit, but I still don't really see her being like a great farmer, even like outside of berserkers, basically. So yeah, it's a small reprieve, I would say, but honestly I would say it's mostly an underwhelming buff. Now on my extra class tier list this year, I had her placed on a flat C, and honestly I don't think I'm gonna move her. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna keep her there. Unless someone comes up with more applications for this buffs, I can't really see anything crazy happening with it. Maybe, or I kind of wish it was more to do with her like supporting with debuffs and whatnot, because this buster buff is only for herself. I think they could have easily made the buster buff AoE, in which case I would have liked this buff quite a bit more, because she already has a lot of stuff in her kit that kind of makes her feel like a support slash DPS. So yeah, probably wouldn't have been the buff I would have given her, needless to say. Now, then we got the Mandricardo buff, again, which is also a skill buff. They're tackling the funny skill, the really weird finicky skill, so let's see what happens now. So his second skill, what it used to do is on a 6-turn cooldown, not that the cooldown mostly matters anyway. You could only ever, first of all, use this skill if your health was 50% or lower, for himself that is, so you can't even use it if you're higher than 50%, doesn't work. But then what do you get if that condition is met? You get 50% attack for 1 time 1 turn, 100% crit damage 1 time 1 turn. He also does remove defensive buffs before damage on the enemy target, which is cool. But then he just instantly dies. That's what used to happen. So as soon as you did 1 attack with this, be it your MP or a crit or whatever, he just dies. No matter if you have a Brave Chain or not, he just snap, he's dead. Everything gets interrupted, he's gone. So in my opinion, this skill was pretty bad, honestly. Even if you know he's gonna like die that turn, it's barely gonna give him like a grand exit or anything like that. So it wasn't even really all that great for that either. But now, let's see, what did they change? Same 6-turn cooldown, which again, mostly irrelevant anyway. Same condition to use it, 50% HP or below. But now, what changed is that the attack and crit buffs are now just flat out 1 turn instead of 1 time, 1 turn. And the other really important thing is that the death now, it's a delayed debuff, and it now happens at the end of his turn. So basically, what this means is that now he can do a full Brave Chain with this skill. He can do his MP, and then he can also crit afterwards, get a lot of damage for both the MP and the crit, or crits potentially, and the extra attack could also benefit from the attack buff. So yeah, now it makes sense. Now it actually will give him kind of a grand exit, because that's a lot of steroids. And again, he's guaranteed to be able to live until the end of his turn, so Brave Chains are now fair game. So this is what the skill should have been from the get-go, in my opinion. So it's, rather than calling it a buff, I mean, it's still a buff, of course. I would rather call this a fix, because what it used to be was way too stupid and weak. It was not even cool or fun or great. And now, while it might not be amazing, because again, he used to get sacrificed, it's cool. I think it's definitely an interesting buff. I do like it, because now the skill makes sense. Now, on my Rider tier list, I had him on an A rank, and honestly, again, much like the previous ones, I don't think I'm gonna move him at all, honestly. I'm just gonna keep him there. He's a solid single-target Arch Rider. I still think Ushi will serve most people more, despite her being quick, just because her kit is so much more appealing, and her MP has also higher damage potential. So, yeah, I'm just gonna keep him there. But you know what? This buff, I would call it a fix, but it's a good one, I would say. So to recap here, Abby's cooldown came down, and then she now gets a 3-turn buster buff on her Terror, meaning that she can now pop it 2 times in farming for a bit more damage on wave 3 as well, and more damage across the board anyway. And for DPSing, it's also a nice little boost, but honestly, I think she needs way more than this to ever become more relevant in the eyes of people that don't really, use her just because they like the character. So for both farming and DPSing, and even supporting, I don't really see this being a big deal, sadly. So she needs way more than this. And for Mandricardo, the skill now, it went from being a total joke to actually kind of a cool thing, which will give him hopefully a very cool exit. Either if you want to, prematurely send him off, or if you know he's gonna die, then this skill is actually pretty decent now. But still a bit finicky all across the board. Now, as for tomorrow, the final day, that is, day 7, for the buffs, we're getting a 5-star Archer buff and a 4-star Saber buff. Now, my prediction for the Archer is either Artemis or Arjuna. I think they could definitely use a buff. I mean, there's more that could use them, like Save, for instance, or Napoleon could still use more buffs, but I'm wagering my money on Artemis or Arjuna. Maybe the former a bit more than the latter. And for the 4-star Saber, my bet is either on Rama or Summer Fran, because they have been doing quite a bit of summer buffs. So, maybe leaning a bit more towards Rama, though, but I could see one of those two easily get buffed. So there you go. Honestly, these last couple of days have been a bit underwhelming in my opinion. They clearly started off really big, like the Salter buff is still mind-blowing to me. I can't believe that's actually a thing and not a bug. But yeah, these past 2 days have been, I would just say kind of underwhelming. But, you can't expect all of these buffs to be insane, so most of them are just small reprieves or arguably just fixes, and it is what it is. But there you go. If you enjoyed this buff breakdown, do me a solid and press the thumbs up button on this video. Really helps out as always. Do subscribe not to miss out on future buff breakdowns, including the one tomorrow. And then whenever they decide to drop more, I'll be there, of course, always day one, just dropping the info and my thoughts about them. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care, and peace out.